Anti-migration protests at asylum hotels have taken place up and down the country over the last few weeks, and this past weekend was no exception, with demonstrations in Epping, Norfolk, and the South Coast. A hotel in London's Islington was also targeted, where anti-migrant protesters faced off against anti-racism demonstrators. Novara's Rivka Brown was on the ground, talking to both sides. It's great reporting, and you can watch that feature on the channel right now. But I want to show you one clip that I found especially interesting, involving two anti-migrant protesters with conflicting views, which are characteristic of a real divide between Britain's right and Britain's far right.
Nothing's going to change, is it? No matter how much we protest, nothing's going to change.
Well, we need revolution.
Yeah, well, we're not doing it like this, are we?
It will come.
When?
Well, we're at
When?
Southport. That was good.
All
Southport was very
talk.
good.
It's all talk.
That was Southport was very good.
So do you think that was a good action? What happened there?
They should have done more. Frankly, they should have done more. They should have dragged them out. Enoch Powell was right. They are demographically replacing us. They are doing a genocide. What they are doing is genocide.
Yeah, but that changes on
And
racism.
someday it'll be like Rwanda.
You've got to let people in the country who contribute and also who want to integrate. A lot of people that come over here don't want to integrate. They go in their own
It
communities.
doesn't matter if they integrate or not. We are full. It doesn't matter if you have 2 billion coming over and
Well, if they're
integrating.
here and they don't
The
integrate,
bottom line
it makes
is
a barren
we don't want to be
society.
demographically
Yeah,
replaced.
but it makes a barren society, doesn't it?
It doesn't matter.
None
If
of
they
us-
all, it doesn't matter if we have 2 million coming over and they're all eating tea and crumpets. They won't be British.
I know.
Just because they pretend to drink tea and eat crumpets doesn't
But
make them
those
British.
days are over, aren't they?
They're not over.
Well, go on, then get them out then.
Well, we're going to.
Who's we?
Well, do you know what happened? Ethnic enclaves are formed. Ethnic enclaves are formed. That's the way it's going to go. People are going to have to go. I'm not gonna hang around them.
What are you going to do then?
Well, I'm going to live in a different area.
And do you think that'll solve the
If I'm
problem?
there, and then
Will that
Vegas.
solve the
I don't want to get stabbed.
If you want to solve the problem, you've got to stop the boats
You're
at
never going to
source.
solve the problem by letting them in as long as they are
about to say,
integrating. That's never going to solve
We
the
should
problem.
have stopped the boats halfway across the channel, tow them back.
Torpedo the boat. Torpedo one boat and they would
Oh,
never come
well, we'll
again.
end
That's
this
what I say.
intelligent conversation.
Now, I will start off by saying, if you want to stop the boats at source, maybe stop destabilising countries in the global south, the UK and America. Just one suggestion from me to you. But I think that kind of juxtaposition of those two viewpoints is really, really interesting. Because I actually think that the man in the grey shirt, he kind of represents closer to the median position on this issue. Most people believe that arriving via small boat is something that is being done illegally in search of economic opportunities to take advantage of the taxpayer, whereas some people come here legally and they integrate, and that's a good thing. And these are two completely distinct groups. When in reality, it's perfectly legal to arrive by irregular means for the purpose of claiming asylum. The vast majority of these cases, especially on appeal, are found to be worthy of having their asylum claim accepted and gaining refugee status. So they're not really illegal. And the issue in terms of them not paying tax, because we don't let them work whilst they're staying in detention, and they're being put up in hotels, because we left the Dublin Protocol, we only had a small boats crisis very recently. We only had a irregular migration crisis from the last few years. So we never built the purpose-built asylum processing accommodation that other countries in Europe have right now. So a lot of people are looking at these things going, oh, this is a new thing that's happening. I think that it's something that scares me. I have worries about the people who are coming in, the level of vetting, when actually we have biometrics tests on these people. We do full interviews. We keep people very well surveilled whilst they stay here, and their levels of crime are particularly higher than the regular population. But it's that level to which that it's a new phenomenon that has caused this level of unrest. And they do tend to be pretty happy when people come here and integrate. And I think the man in the grey shirt was correct in saying so. I think it's good. And then in the other area, you have the full-on re-migration types. They're very similar to the AfD, for example, their position in Germany, where one of their campaign stunts, I guess, was to put plane tickets into immigrants' post boxes, saying we're going to deport you if we're going to get into government. That's the kind of ideological position that the re-migration type's making. And he's making, or was basically an ethno-nationalist argument. These people can't integrate. It's bad they're coming here because they're not part of the ethnic group that we perceive the nation state should be representing, which is a very kind of a early 20th, late 19th century view of what the nation state is supposed to be. So this juxtaposition, this kind of difference between these opinions here, is why you're seeing things such as Nigel Farage, who I think it's clear to me, this is just my speculation, but I think I am willing to at least suggest that I believe this to be true, that the reason why he wanted to get rid of Rupert Lowe, because he was just too extreme. He was representative of the remigration ethno-nationalist types that you saw from the man in red during that clip. And it doesn't have broad appeal. And you see Nigel Farage in interviews, he says, well, migration was good up until the mass migration, and then it became bad. You know, migrants can come here as long as they pay tax and integrate, but can't have too many because of the infrastructure. We need to stop it until we can build the infrastructure to be able to make this thing work again, which is, again, closer to the median position, and then says the small boats have to stop. They have to stop at source. We need to take the boats back, for example. Again, there's no reason to do this because crossing the channel to claim asylum is perfectly fine. But that's where the median position is that Nigel Farage is angling Reform UK towards. And Rupert Lowe was representative of something that actually makes the party look far too extreme and doesn't make them look like a mainstream party. And I think Nigel Farage is probably worried that the more that gets platformed, the more of the red guy's view is going to be more mainstreamed in this country. And that would lead to what we've seen in terms of more of the agitative protests around migrant hotels. We've seen attacks on asylum seekers. We documented one a couple of weeks ago on Novara, a guy from Yemen who'd been attacked in the street. And, it's a really dangerous position that we're in. And this arms race in terms of rhetoric is actually interesting in the way that's affected the Reform Conservative split, because I actually think that Reform are probably to the left of the Conservative Party on a great many issues, especially on what Nigel Farage wants the party to look like on migration, because the Conservatives have to win the arms race in terms of the escalation of rhetoric, because they have to overcome the fact that when they were in government, they created this atmosphere. They deliberately tried to manipulate the public discourse by, in my mind, in my opinion, creating this problem, first of all, by having a crappy Brexit deal that meant that we had the small boat problem created by the lack of sticking to the Dublin Protocol. Then, instead of having it dispersed in communities in residential accommodation where it wasn't like an individual flashpoint for protest, they put them in hotels at 7 times the cost of putting them in residential accommodation. The contracts went out to Tory donors. So it was a very easy to catch. It was a very eye-catching and very, very polarizing situation that they had created. They created a lightning rod for dissent and then marketed that as their single pledge, as their single kind of raison d'etre in the run-up to the election, and then failed to deliver on that promise. So they have created the atmosphere for what we're seeing now. Again, in my mind, totally cynically, to try and weaponize the asylum seekers and irregular migration to be a focal point of electoral politics. And then once they failed, they can only kind of one-up where they were before in their extremes. And all the Reform UK have to do is go, well, look at this problem the Tories created and amplified. We'll solve that problem. We don't have a track record of failure. They do. And suddenly we're in the situation where the rhetoric gets more and more extreme. Kieran, this is, again, something that we're seeing more and more on the right wing of politics. It could get pretty nasty pretty quickly. What do you think?
I mean, first of all, stupid observation. The guy in the red hoodie looked a lot like Jimmy Fallon, and I kind of hoped it was him for an elaborate prank. I think that the first time I debated Nigel Farage, it was around the time of the Ballymena riots, and what he was intent on doing, Helena, in that conversation and in his studio, was kind of paying lip service to the, I don't support thuggery or violence, but, and I saw him do that repeatedly on and off air. And I think basically I am perhaps more concerned that Nigel Farage, yes, he expelled Rupert Lowe because Rupert Lowe committed the faux pas of saying the quiet part out loud. But Farage is very skilled at knowing what to say out loud and what to keep quiet. And I think that he is perfectly happy. This is just my opinion, but it's based on observation of him close up. He is perfectly happy to have a coalition that includes guy in the red hoodie and the guy in the grey t-shirt. Now, of course, he would never say that. Of course, he would never say that. But it's my considered opinion that is what he is comfortable with. And I think what scares me more is that he is extremely skilled at knowing exactly where, the Overton window, whatever, but he's extremely skilled at knowing where the line is, where the boundary is, what the public will accept. And of course, he has been more than anyone else utterly instrumental in shifting that boundary over the past 20 years. I mean, scarily impressive at doing that. It's got a friend who's only sort of intermittently engaged with politics, moved out to Portugal years ago, came back. I told him that Farage was likely to be the next prime minister if things don't change. And he was utterly stunned because he said 20 years ago when we were kids, this was just a fringe figure. And so I think that you don't get to that position without being an extremely skilled ventriloquist for all of the kind of tendencies eddying in the undercurrents, in the political undercurrents. And I think what Farage is brilliant at doing, unfortunately, and, I believe we can beat him. I'm willing to put everything into that. But what he is very good at doing is seeing what's eddying undercurrent, seeing what's on the surface and visible, and linking those two things almost subliminally without alienating either part of that coalition. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from there. I just think that the rhetoric that I've heard from him that sounds like him moderating himself is the kind of thing that is actually leading to people to go, I can't support reform UK. They've gone woke. I mean, we had this ridiculous thing with Nigel Farage having this prison expert, this previous kind of prison expert. She wrote a book about it, coming on and saying something about, I don't want to just put all trans women in men's prisons. And then suddenly everyone's going, reform's gone woke, we can't vote for them. And the Tories are taking a more extreme position on this as well. And the Tories are the progenitors of the phrase, quote unquote, stop the boats. And you see that on placards, you see people chanting it in the streets at the protests, and I worry that, again, we're just going to see a continual kind of furthering of the rhetoric and the narrative, especially from what are essentially desperate politicians from the Conservative Party. They can see themselves getting wiped out. Polls are putting them on 20, 15 seats or something like that. Potentially coming in 6th or 7th place in an election because of regional parties. So maybe you're right. And Nigel Farage is towing the line so that he can try and hold this coalition together because he believes that the real extremities, the real headbangers and wingnuts have nowhere else to go and they will fall in line eventually. If that's the case and they do end up being able to hide their power level, then that's going to be disastrous for everybody. But whether that's true or not, the Conservative Party's desire to be more extreme to win these people back, given their existing failures on these issues, and the fact they can't run on the economy anymore. A lot of the problems that the Conservative Party had is that they can't run on economic prudence because of Liz Truss. I mean, they should be because of George Osborne, who was far worse, but Liz Truss is this unique figure in Conservative politics that essentially broke apart this kind of mystique, this completely unreasonable kind of public perception of the Conservatives as being good with the economy when they basically never have been, whether it is the recessions under Thatcher and privatisation or the Barber boom or austerity or Liz Truss or whatever it is, or everything that's been done economically by the Tories outside of Harold Macmillan, basically. They can't run on that. They have to stoke the culture war. They have to stoke social tension to be able to drive wedges between people that have unified class interests. And given that there is a party doing that better than they do, there's only a choice of escalation. And that's where I find a real problem lying in the future.